Good day, everyone. Today is Thursday, and we are now exploring in the human resources management subject that connected to our topic to be tackled today about the working with labor union. So, ano bala ang labor union yung natawag ta? Is it useful to every employee or businesses? Is it harmful? So, without labor union, do you think the relationship of every employee or worker can considered a long lasting even though there is abusive behind happening? So, without further ado, let's start in defining the labor union. A labor union is a group of two or more employees who join together to advance common interests such as wages, benefits, schedules, and other employment terms and conditions. So the labor union is an organization or samahan ng mga manggagawa which has the same interest to gain like sahod, benepisyo, or mga oras ng pagtatrabaho which is in return to their hardship at work. So, merong nature ang labor union kung saan nakapaloob ang mga involved na mga persona, ang impact nito at saka yung purpose. First and foremost is the workers or the laborers sa isang factory or sa isang kumpanya kung saan nagpapatakbo ng business which is building a labor union or samahan together for fighting the rights as an employee or a worker for the labor rights. So that should address to them kasi there is no employee and businesses will stay long last if there is no labor union, because you know what, labor union is a string that connected to each other to ignite the power of business growth and employees worth. Now, let's go to how a labor union works. So, labor union have a democratic structure, holding elections to choose officers who are charged with making decisions that are beneficial to the members. Employees pay dues to the union, and in return, the labor union acts as an advocate on the employees' behalf. So, labor unions are often industry specific and tend to be most common today among public sector government employees and those in transportation and utilities. So, nearly all unions are structured and work in similar ways. U.S. law requires an employer to actively bargain with a union in good faith. However, the employer is not required to agree to any specific terms. Multiple negotiation rounds are conducted between the union's bargaining unit, a group of members whose duty is to assure that its members are properly compensated and represented, and the employer. In order to access the ideal decisions to share benefits as well sa mga employee, may tinatawag tayong democracy structure, which is to choose a leader by voting. So without the leader, do you think the management of business or the organization will do have a vision? Di ba hindi? So maglilid lang ito into suffer because of lack of vision. So the compensation and benefits manager or the remuneration professionals are responsible for overseeing employee compensation, employees benefits, compensation database, and annual performance reviews, and etc. and so on. A collective bargaining agreement or CBA is eventually agreed upon and signed. The CBA outlines pay scales and includes other terms of employment such as vacation and sick days, benefits, working hours, and working conditions. The collective bargaining, ito yung proseso kung saan the parties agree to fix and administer terms and conditions of employment kung saan hindi bababa sa minimum standard fix na batay sa batas. One of the example of labor union is the NEA or the National Education Association, which represents teachers and others education professionals and is the largest labor union in the United States with nearly 3 million members. So it represents the public school teachers, substitute teachers, higher education faculty members, education support workers, administrators, retired teachers, and students working to become teachers. The NEO works with local and state educational system to set adequate wages and working conditions for its members, among other activities. So that is the best example of the labor union, which also the largest labor union in the United States. Aside from the purpose or the function of labor union, there is an impact behind either advantages or disadvantages. So let's start from the pros. Sa pros number one is unions provide worker protections. In most US states, non-union workers are at will employees. In short, employers can fire employees for virtually or any reason. Of course, there are limitations in place such as discrimination. For union members, it's different. There must be just cause, and it's not a simple firing. In most instances, this type of decision must go through arbitration or a grievance procedure. So, arbitration is an out-of-court method resolving. Kung sa baga, si arbitrator ay makikinig sa bawat side ng isa't isa at gagawa ng decision to resolve a dispute between worker and employer. That is the arbitration or grievance procedure. So speaking of those procedures, unions make it easier for worker to handle disputes and complaints with management and other workers. Members, regardless of status, are able to use the processes to raise grievance. In some union, members will see the organization subsides legal fees on disputes related to discrimination and wrongful termination. So, will the some of the organizations that subsides, there is a legal fees or disputes related to discrimination or wrongful termination. So meron din pala mga fees or related sa money na bayaran, no, if ever there is this discrimination ang wrongful termination na nangyayari. Pros number two is unions promote higher wages and better benefits. Through collective bargaining, unions are able to secure higher wages and better benefits. That said, that unionized workers are not the only one has to benefit from this, but employers have also raised wages for non-unionized workers in order to compete for talent. So, non-unionized, those are the mga private sectors na mga company or na mga businesses. Pros number three is unions are a economic trendsetters. So before unions, weekends and provisions for workers did not really exist, even though the US workforce has not been 100% unionized. Unions do impact trends that benefit all workers. So other examples include the minimum wages, OSHA guidelines, and overtime rules. So, pros number four, political organizing is easier. Unions are able to amplify and advance political causes the working class supports. This doesn't necessarily mean unionized workers always support the political agenda of their union. But generally speaking, unions help keep candidates focused on issues that matter to the American worker, unionized or non-unionized. Now it's time to the cons of the labor union. So con number one is unions require dues and fees that some workers don't want to pay. So workplace with unions fall into two categories, open and closed. What's the difference between the two? Open shops don't require employees to pay dues or fees to the union. In a closed environment, employees have to be union members in order to apply for a job. Some will allow candidates to apply for the job as a non-unionized candidate. But if the candidate is hired, the non-member must become a member. Some allow employees to work as non-members, but those workers are required to pay agency fees which contribute to the work the union is doing. Opponents say closed environments are unfair to those individuals who have valid reason for not supporting the work of the union. Another reason for this particular con is that union dues are deducted from a worker's paycheck. In most circumstances, that can translate to a deduction of 1.5% to 2.5% in their pay. These fees can reduce or wipe out any pay gain the employee would have had in moving from a previous job to another. Cons number two is the labor unions discourage individuality. Workers are bound by the decision of the union even if they disagree with the decision. In some instances, the only way a unionized employee can get out of the situation is to resign, which isn't always an option. Also, working in groups encourages groupthink situations, which in turn discourages individual creativity. So, cons number three is union make it harder to promote and terminate workers. Union focus a lot on the seniority of the worker. This often translates into the lack of advancement for new and high-performing employees to advance. Similarly, it is difficult to demote those employees who are not performing at high levels. Going a step further, unions can discount worker education and experience. Because of seniority, the perfect employee may not get the job because they have not been with the company or union a specific amount of time. Number four, unions can drive up cost. Though it is a pro that unions can often get higher compensation for their members, it can likewise be stated that hiring unionized workers can be more expensive than hiring non-unionized workers. It also comes with added safeguards and rules and regulations that can lead to higher litigations and negotiation costs should issues be taken to arbitration or put through a grievance process. And now here's the laws of labor union. We have the five laws under the labor union: the Railway Labor Act, Norris LaGuardia Act, Wagner Act, Taft-Hartley Act, and Landrum-Freefing Act. So first is the Railway Labor Act. It covers railroad and airlines. Alternate dispute resolution methods instead of striking for these two industries. So this act naman is to avoid service interaction. So ito yung nagbibigay rights sa railroad employee to organize and bargain those collectively through representative of their own choosing. So it passed to reducted labor conflicts and of course the possibility of transportation strikes. Number two is Norris LaGuardia Act. As a result of Yellow Dog contracts, barred federal courts from issuing injunctions against non-violent labor dispute. So this act naman is restrict the ability of employee to obtain an injunction or against unions for the lawful activities. Number three is Wagner Act. It allowed for freedom to join a union without interference, may not discriminate against union employees, set collective bargaining rules. So Wagner Act or National Labor Republic Act, this is the right of employees to form, to join, to assist labor organization, and of course kung sa baga it promote orderly and a peaceful recognition of unions and collective bargaining. So it places an affirmative duty on employers to bring and deal to bargain and deal in good faith with unions. Number four is the Taft-Hartley Act. So it's amended by Wagner Act. focus was on unfair practices by the union. So Taft-Hartley Act, the purpose of Taft-Hartley Act is to protect employee rights by unfair practices by unions. And the last one is the Landrum Briefing Act, which required unions to hold secret elections. Financial reporting of unions required. After the laws, we have the unionization process. Una is the employee dissatisfaction. Union contacts employees or employees contact union. And then, initial organization meeting. So, initial meeting with union to gather employee support. Third is signatures. It must have 30% of employee signatures to move forward with unionization process. And fourth is the secret ballot election or the card check method. Once 30% of signatures are gathered, a secret ballot election is administered by the National Labor Relations Board if the company does not accept the card check method. And the last one is the voting and contract. If the vote is yes, 51% majority, the union is the legal bargaining representative of the employees. And that is the unionization process it through before you take the place of the legal bargaining. And furthermore, here's the things that shouldn't be said to employees during a unionization process. Threatens with discharge or punishment. Threaten to terminate because of unionization. Threaten layoff, loss of job, benefits, or salary because of unionization. Threatens to shut down business because of unionization. Prevention of member solicitation during non-working hours. Questions about union matters such as how employee will vote in election. And that are those things that is inevitable. Overall, it is important joining a union or the labor union simply means that you and your colleges have a say that because you negotiate important elements of employment conditions together. So that could mean securing wage increases, better access to healthcare, workplace safety, enhancement, and more reasonable and predictable hours. And that is all my report for today's discussion about the working with labor unions. I hope you learned something from my report and hoping guys that you will continue to listen and watch more videos that is knowledgeable that will help us in the future. Thank you.